Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. This is a video response to an individual here on YouTube named Debate with M, and I want to thank this user for responding to part 2 of my video response to the debate clip between David Wood and the individual who runs Answering Christianity. First off, thank you for responding. I enjoy when people get involved in rational dialogue in a respectful manner, and I first off would like to thank you for that. You raised several points, and so I'm going to try and sort of go through them as best as I can here, because I'm afraid that I feel that a lot of what you presented can be answered if you watch both parts of my videos. And I don't know if you watched part 1, but there is a part 1, and what you responded to was just part 2. So the reason why this is going to be relatively short is because I don't want to repeat myself. You mentioned, I recall that you said something to the effect of that Ibn Ishaq is is a very early biographer, so therefore he is more authentic than the Hadith traditions and the collections. Not entirely true. Now, as I established in my videos, I made it very clear that the science of Hadith is so extensive that and so precise that Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim are more authentic than Ibn Ishaq. And as I also illustrate in both my videos, Ibn Ishaq is not the earliest biographer. And we have contemporaries of his, like Ibn Hisham, that abridged Ibn Ishaq's biography, and that is considered by scholars to be even more authentic of a biography than Ibn Ishaq. And the satanic verses do not show up in that biography. In fact, Ibn Ishaq and Tabari are the only two people who include the satanic verses within their narrations. Now, you made a good point. You said now Ibn Ishaq was a devout Muslim, so why would he include a story? Or I think you might have been confused about what I said. You seem to imply, and tell me if I'm wrong, you seem to imply that Ibn Ishaq came up with this story. So I think I heard you say, why would Ibn Ishaq write this story if if it would denigrate you said his master Muhammad. Now, the thing is that Ibn Ishaq, let's be very clear, Ibn Ishaq did not write this story. And as I said in my videos, Ibn Ishaq and Tabari both included things in their histories and their biographies, anything that they heard. Anything at all. They didn't even bother to check with the authenticity of hardly any of these reports. Now, we know that Ibn Ishaq left out almost half of the narration for the satanic verses. What I mean is a chain of narrators, and we know that and I mentioned this in my video, that Waqidi is the first narrator, and he is considered by Islamic scholars to be an outright liar and a fabricator of hadiths. So therefore, he is not someone who's authentic. Therefore, this chain would be rejected and is rejected by Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and things of this nature. Now, I feel that you kind of have a double standard here because you quoted some hadiths that are from Sahih Bukhari. Now, if you're of the opinion that Sahih Bukhari is less authentic than Ibn Ishaq, and Ibn Ishaq does not record some of the stories that you mentioned about black magic and things of this nature, then I feel like you're kind of picking and choosing yourself about which ones you would like to present your case with. I'm just throwing that out there. Now, my point is this. The chain of transmitters, the science of Hadith, is so extensive and is so precise that we know that each tradition, because that's all Ibn Ishaq is just a variety of traditions that he brought together, that many of his traditions, including the one that is of the satanic verses, is not authentic. It is not authentic, and it does not show up in any of the 6 hadith collections. And let's be very clear, Tirmidhi's hadith collection, Sunan Abu Dawud, Ibn Majah, and Al-Nasi, they have hadiths that are weak, and some that are considered fabricated, but yet these scholars who compiled these collections made it very clear that these traditions were not authentic. They were weak. Some were fabricated. Yet I find it very interesting that not a single one of the 6 collections have the satanic verse tradition in there. And that's pretty much because of the idea that Waqidi was an outright liar, and they were not going to include anything in their collections. Now, again, I'll say it again, Ibn Ishaq is not the earliest biographer. And I also said in my videos that I do not believe Ibn Ishaq included this story to be degrading towards the Prophet Muhammad. I agree with you, he was a devout Muslim. And I agree with you that I don't think his motive was to denigrate. Why would he? And I agree with you, why would he? It makes no sense. Now, the reasoning for this is because, like I said, he was including any story that he heard, anything he wanted to. And it wasn't to poke fun at the prophet, it wasn't to denigrate the prophet or to put things into this. Now, you mentioned, and I mentioned in my video, it's to illustrate the point that God is more powerful than Satan and that God will take care of it in preserving his message. So that, I think, is the point of the actual tradition of the Satanic verses. And I don't think Ibn Asaq wanted that in there as a point to discourage Muhammad's prophethood, and I completely agree with you on that point. Now, I agree with you that in 7th century Arabia, there were many cultures. They were a very superstitious culture. They believed in magic and things of this nature. And I'm only going to comment on those because I agree with you. In 7th century Arabia, they did believe in these sort of things. And as Muhammad being not only a messenger of God, he was a 7th century Arab, he would believe in some of these concepts. That's another reason why many of these hadiths are not of the category of divinely inspired hadiths. I'm sure you're aware of that. There are divinely inspired hadiths. And a lot of if they're not divinely inspired hadiths, they are hadiths that the Prophet was coming from a position of a 7th century Arab. He was not being inspired by God. He had to give advice that would be relevant for 7th century Arabs. Case in point, there are hadiths that have to do with medicine. And the medicine worked for the 7th century Arabs. But we now have much more advanced medicines today. So does that mean that Muslims have to go back and use the same 7th century Arab medications that they use? No, by no means. Today, Muslims who can afford it or are in first world countries or in second world countries do use modern medicine. But this is my point, is that there are large parts of the hadiths that are not obligatory to follow with regards to that, and are, I would argue, in the 7th century Arabian peninsula, and are limited to that. But the things that are inspired by God, that are in the Quran, are for all of humanity, for all time. Some of the hadiths are, what I would argue, are time-bound. Now, having said that, you mentioned a hadith from Ibn Abbas, I believe you mentioned, where it talks about all of, after the verse was revealed in Surah 53, where the Prophet prostrated, the pagans prostrated, the jinns prostrated, and all of mankind prostrated. And this is a very beautiful hadith. And you look at any commentary, and I would encourage you to look this up in Tafsir of Ibn Kathir and other scholars that have commentated. I have a Sahih Muslim that there's a commentary on that as well, on that hadith. And it mentions that the reason why they all prostrated was not because of the satanic verses. There's no mention of that anywhere. But the idea that the surah was so beautiful that the pagans, all of the jinn, and all of mankind apparently all prostrated together. Now, again, do we know for sure that all of the jinn literally prostrated? Do we know that all the pagans literally prostrated? And do we know that all of mankind at that very moment all prostrated? As a logical individual, I would argue that's probably a stretch of the imagination. As a person of faith, is it possible? Sure. But of course, I also keep in mind that things can be made to be metaphorical. And in fact, there are many commentaries that do mention that this is a metaphorical concept, meaning that this was such a beautiful surah that was mentioned, Surah 53, that it was a metaphorical statement to say that it was such an impact on Mecca that it appeared that everyone was prostrating in agreement that this was a beautiful surah. Again, Ibn Kathir mentioned this as well. With regards to, you mentioned the 3 knots when someone is sleeping. When they wake up, one knot is loosened. When they do ablution, another knot is loosened. And then when they perform the Fajr prayer, the last knot is loosened. Again, this is all metaphor. You have to understand that, yes, there was metaphor that is used in the hadiths, and that they're all not supposed to be taken literally. And we have to make that sort of differentiation between the two. And many Muslim scholars agree that this, again, is a metaphorical statement to talk about laziness. The knots represent drowsiness when getting out of bed, being lazy, and that when you finally get up, do your thing, you're no longer lazy anymore. And that to get out of bed and things like this. So I hope this sort of answers some of your questions. Again, I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself because I would refer to you back on not just part 2, which you responded to, but part 1 as well. And again, I thank you for responding. If I was unclear in anything, please make another video if you wish, or leave a comment, and I would love to continue the conversation. You sound like a very, very intelligent and a very nice individual, and so I appreciate having a dialogue with you. Thank you for responding again. I hope this video was appropriate. Peace be with you all.